Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus, and welcome back to the second half of the interview with me. We are joined again today by Patel, who's one of the hosts of the Best Ever Show, my friend, my mentor, and one of, I believe, the best podcast hosts out there in the real estate space. So let's jump back into that interview. I've had a few people who were on the show who are doctors, who were multifamily investors, who then would call back because they were, somebody was pitching them a deal, or they were looking at a deal that was a warehouse or an industrial space. And it was eye-opening because they had been doing multifamily for a while and it had some pretty good success at it. And they had no idea of what there's not that standard playbook like multifamily of what they should be asking about in buying a multi-tenant factory space. So I've had a few of those conversations, which have been good too.
Yeah. And you like variety, you like excitement, and you certainly like challenges. So if you would talk about the differences between, you mentioned multifamily has a playbook, and there have been several books written on, it's literally the playbook, right? You get an apartment building, you get one that's built in 1980 or newer, below market rents, you go in there, paint the kitchen cabinets, redo the flooring, lighting, bathrooms, increase rent, rinse and repeat. But there's no creativity. You're just following the playbook, and everybody's doing that now, which is why multifamily prices have collapsed. Interest rates killed them. And there's just so much competition out there for multifamily. So what is it about commercial that really appeals to you?
It was that creativity, that no deal is the same. There's not a playbook. And I think I had always, it had been, I don't know, it seemed like something that was untouchable for a long time, that they're like, well, how do you invest in one of those? How do you drive and buy the strip mall? And you're like, well, who owns that? And for a long time, I thought it was all like big private equity that must be owned by some giant corporation. I had no idea that there was smaller operators who owned a few and did great with it. So part of it was, as we came out of COVID, everything was so competitive. I mean, we tried to buy some multifamily and nothing would pencil out. And you'd talk to people and they're like, oh, no, we'll make our money on the appreciation. And that's where they all got in trouble, is when it didn't appreciate, it didn't go well. But, you don't have the same ability to take something. I don't know, you find an old warehouse building and you clean it up and lease it, and it goes from being worth nothing to being worth the value of a lease. I guess there's so many different ways to look at commercial space, and you know this, but there's not one way to do it. And almost every deal has multiple ways that you can find to do a value add, whether it's repositioning the tenant, repositioning the building, creatively financing it. All these different things just give a lot of different puzzles to figure out. And I think that's maybe, for me, was a lot like doing surgery. I mean, that I think some surgeries, and I won't, as my kids say, throw shade on any other specialties that maybe have more straightforward procedures. But as urologist, as a pelvic surgeon, the abdomen and pelvis, it's always a joke. Like, you do a surgery that actually looks like the one that was in the textbook. Today, this went the way it was supposed to. But usually it's like doing a remodel on a house. Until you get in there, you don't really know what you're going to find. And so there's a lot of creative problem solving along the way. And I think that's where I found that I wasn't looking to exit where healthcare is becoming more and more a manual. There's a lot of protocols and everybody wants to protocol everything. And a lot of those protocols are good, but it's very different than doctors 50 years ago that had to figure stuff out. And so I wasn't looking for real estate to kind of be the same thing and where you come in and you just do everything exactly the same. I liked the creativity. It was more fun to go into a space where everything was a puzzle and you just kind of had to find the angle that made it work.
Yeah, not only is it more fun, but the potential for much higher returns is there. And if you contrast multifamily, you look at apartments, they're all bound by comps. If you have a Class B apartment in this zip code, the maximum your rent could be is this because the Class A apartments rent for this. So there's a limit to the upside on multifamily, right? You're building value slowly. With the example that you mentioned, you could take a block building with a metal roof that's vacant, buy it for $200,000-$300,000. If you can sign a 10-year lease with a Dollar General, you just made $1.2 million. You can't do that in any other asset class, right? Which is why non-residential commercial is so appealing.
Yeah. And if you're going to do the work, do the work that is going to pay the best.
Yeah. And what else you mentioned? I've had so many people say, wow, I didn't think you could actually just buy a strip mall. Or an office building. I didn't know that was a thing. Well, it's like, yeah, it's amazing how many people don't know that. I mean, and the returns, I spoke with a multifamily broker of 20 years, and this guy does $5 to $20 million deals. And he just interviewed me for his podcast, and his mind was blown. And here's the kicker. His wife is a commercial leasing specialist in retail. They're so siloed, they don't know the investment side of things, right? And he's like, my mind is blown. Like, I'm going to have to talk to my wife and figure out how we can invest in retail. And to that point, retail right now, people think there's a retail apocalypse, right? The COVID, the Amazon effect. And retail is the best kept secret in real estate because the vacancy for the last 20 years has been going down steadily. Right now, retail has the lowest vacancy in history at 4%. So it's the best asset class and nobody knows about it. And people are too scared to invest in it. But it is by far the best way to get returns. Mike, what are you hoping to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 years?
The next 2 to 3 years. Wow. Yeah. That's interesting because I've been thinking very short term recently that Friday was my last day in the practice.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. I thought it would be this like glorious day where you walk out in this beam of sunshine, and it's actually been really hard. It is kind of this like, oh, there's no more paycheck and nothing changed. All the numbers are the same they were 2 months ago. It just all of a sudden, I don't know. It's been a little bit of a difficult thing. And that I kind of put off my timeline with leaving was to not move my kids before they finish high school. So my youngest daughter graduates from high school tomorrow is her graduation. So, and then we have family coming and, so I've been on this like, okay, I got to get through the next 2 weeks and then we're going to move to Salt Lake City and then I got to get moved. And I'm like, okay, like July, I'll start thinking about the next 2 years, but what do I want to accomplish? Really, the biggest thing is I want to introduce more doctors. And I think this is it, that when you're stuck in it, it's so hard to see beyond it. Because for myself is I want to build something that's fun to do, creative problem solving with real estate and make some money and have time to enjoy it for me personally. But I want to drag some doctors along with me so that and help them understand that you're not stuck, whether you want to completely leave medicine or whether you want to just work a normal schedule. If you want to work part-time, you can do all those things and it's okay. Somebody asked me at my retirement party, they were like, how do you feel about walking away from something you spent so much time learning and is so specialized in all the sacrifices you've made? And to me, I'm like, I'm a little nervous about losing the paycheck, but I'm really excited to leave the headaches behind. I'm really excited to have a life I can enjoy. And I think maybe but that's the hurdle for a lot of docs. They feel like they don't understand the sunk cost. That time's put in. You're not going to get it back. But you don't have to choose your future based upon the time you spent in the past. And it's okay to do something different, whether it's completely different or part-time different. And I would really encourage them to find out about other ways to make their money work for them sooner rather than later. There's a lot of burnout doctors. I see them now and I see the fear in their eyes. And I would love for more of them to know that they don't have to be a slave to the system. And there's other ways to start building income streams that then you can be work optional. If you love being a doctor, keep doing it. Keep doing it as much as you love it. If you love it, one of my partners, and he'll work 60 hours a week in our practice and then take his weekend off and go do locums. And he's like, I love it. He goes, you don't love it anymore? And I'm like, no. And he's like, I still love it. Like, I think if somebody told him, you've got a week to live, what are you going to do? He's like, I got to fill up my surgery schedule. If you love something that much, that's awesome. I was a little bit jealous. Like, I wish I loved it that much. It would have made life a lot easier. But if you don't, or if you love being a doctor 30 hours a week or 15 hours a week and love doing other stuff the rest of the time, that's okay too. And I think some of that feeling trapped is what leads doctors to be burned out, is once you feel stuck, it's like that noose tightening around your neck. But if you have other options, then when hospitals are pulling their monkey business, you're like, well, I don't really need you. I can go do something else.
Mike, that's an amazing out of the box way to think. You say the word stuck. I'm going to use the word fear. I was in a corporate job that I hated going to work, but I lied to myself saying, this is great. I got a great career. For 15 years, I did that. And it was fear that really paralyzed me. How scared were you on a scale of 1 to 10? What was your fear level?
It varied, but at times it was a 10. After my last day, where I thought the next day would, like I said, would be sunshine and butterflies. And I woke up at 3 a.m. in a sweat, like, I don't have a job anymore. and at times it's really hard. It's scary. And I guess if you had built at a conference, somebody talked about this different. Like, we think about retirement as a bucket, like what a bucket of money, and how big's your bucket got to be? And they talked about instead thinking of it like a river or a stream, and it's the flow. And so you're building a flow, and as that flow reaches a point that it pays your bills, now you're free. And so I didn't have enough time to build the flow to be able to walk away easy. But I think if somebody has that passive income that pays all the bills, that will make the fear a lot less. From the financial side, I think it's also hard that if, I said that I wasn't going to be a doctor my whole life. I kind of wandered around a little bit. And I think for some people who their parents were doctors and they were set on that course their whole life, and it's really part of their personality, it's even harder than to think about it not being your thing. And then you add on your family. I know some docs that, if they talked about quitting and their wives are like, what are you talking about? They're like, no, you can't do that. And so I'm fortunate. My wife's like, man, I've been here with you through this whole rodeo. I'm as ready as you are to be done with it. So she's all on board, and that really helps, because at the times when I've been really anxious about it and fearful, she's like, you got this. It's okay. We're going to be all right. So that helps too. But yeah, the fear can be intense.
Yeah. You've seen this. I'm sure I've seen it for many years. Anyone that I know that's very successful as an entrepreneur, they always have a supportive spouse. And we couldn't do it without that. Right. So what do you say? What's your advice to those individuals whose spouse says, look, no, we're not giving up this income? How do you have that conversation?
I think it's that you got to have the same vision for life. That was another one. That was a keynote at a conference where there was the guy was the CEO of Taco Bell and was the guy who brought Adidas back from the dead. And he talked about you got to have a vision in a company that everybody knows what you're trying to accomplish. And everybody's got to know that vision. He says most companies' vision statements are just a bunch of gobbledygook. And I pulled out the hospital one and I was like, look at this. This is like 100 words of nothing. It has all the right words, but it's not something somebody can go, this is where we're going with. And it was a point that I realized I had a different vision for my life and a different vision for what I do with our practice than my partners. And so that was actually the point where after that I went back and told them, I'm like, listen, I'm going to be done. Here's my timeline. But I think with your wife, it's the same thing. If you have to have a common vision of how you want to live. And if it's that you want to spend time together and travel together and have fun and not be stressed out, then when you have that common vision of what you want to do differently, it gives you some place to go together. If somebody's spouse is like, listen, I love, our life because you're at work and I got time to hang out with my friends and have coffee and drink wine and shop, man, that may not work out. That's going to be a tough one to get past and have the two of you move through it together.
Do a lot of your colleagues or just people in the medical profession that live up to the limit of their means, do you think?
I think so. I think it's that whole delayed gratification where people you went to college with were making money while you were still in med school. And then you get there and you want to do these things and have a nice car and live in the nice house and do these things. And yeah, I know docs that they're like, well, I max out my 401k. And okay. And I guess, if you weren't like me, if you became a doctor you finished med school at 26, residency at 30-ish, and you work till you're 60 or 70, you probably can put away plenty of money over that timeline that it's not a big deal. I don't know. I was on a different timeline, but a lot do. I think, yeah, they want people to see them as being successful.
Did you live up to the level of your means, or were you always pretty frugal? Did you splurge? Like when you got some of those big paychecks coming in?
I splurged, but I think because I grew up in a working class family and then spent my 20s being poor, is my ideas of splurging weren't as big as others. Like, I think the biggest splurges, I bought my wife a Mercedes but it was 2 years old. I didn't even buy a new one, but we finally bought the big doctor house, but that was as our kids were starting high school. And part of it was we want to have a place that they want to hang out here with their friends. And then we don't have to worry about where they're at. And we got the house that, I guess there again, we found the one that was poorly positioned on the market. The real estate agent did a horrible job setting it up. It was decorated funny. The paint was bad. And so we got it at like a 40% discount off of what it had been built for 5 years earlier. So even that wasn't, the gigantic splurge. So it was, I kind of knew going into being a doctor that I came into it without a pot to piss in and that I had to make up some ground once I was making money. So I never really went all out.
Mike, over the last couple months, when people found out that you're going to be leaving the medical profession, how many of them thought you had just lost your mind? How many people said, are you nuts? Is this a phase? What are you doing? How many conversations like that did you have to have?
A few. It was more, I think the people who thought they would, because a lot of them were conversations with doctors. Conversations with doctors, I think a lot of them, it scared them that I was leaving. Like, is this going to happen to me? Is there something I missed? And so I could see as soon as the conversation started, they were in their own head thinking about how this might affect them or what this looks like for them. So that was interesting. And talking to patients, there was a split. Some of them were really worried that they're like, oh no, all my doctors are quitting. And they were worried about having doctors. But there were other ones who were like, oh man, retirement's great. You're going to love it. Yeah. Way to do it before you're old and can't enjoy it. And So it was really a mixed bag. I think it was the Are You Crazy was really, it was a couple docs at my retirement party who were like, how can you just walk away from something you spent decades learning? It was, and really I could see like they're just unfathomable. Like I don't know why anybody would do that. So it's been a mixed bag.
You know what you do? You ask them, hey, do you love what you do? Yes. And then you say, look, if you won $100 million in the lottery, would you go back to work for free? Well, no. Then you don't love what you do. It's a necessary evil. It's a means to an end, right? But anybody who says, I love my job, no, you really don't. Because if you loved it, you would do it for free no matter what. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I get the argument, right? You work so hard at this, but man, like you're a free spirit, you're passionate, you take the time to methodically make these decisions, and everything you do, you crush, you kill it. And now you're moving to Salt Lake, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Why Salt Lake? What are you going to do?
Well, I saw like I'm going to ski and I'm going to ride my mountain bike and I'm going to spend time hiking in the mountains and in the desert. Yeah, I grew up in Western Colorado, so this is kind of a move home. It's closer to home and it's a great metro area. It's really booming. I think it's probably 20, 30 years behind Denver. Denver now is really tough on the affordability side. It's a great industrial city and transportation city. The I-80 runs through there. The busiest railroad in the country runs through there. So there's a lot of warehouse business going on. I actually know a doc there who is a few years ahead of me. When we were at the Best Ever conference, he was like, "Oh yeah, we just poured concrete today on get what it was, like 1 million square foot warehouse or some just giant." So I really think it's going to be a good place to focus most of my real estate investing. I don't know if it's that. I mean, it seems like everything else, like you're in the hotbed. Maybe I should be moving to Ohio with Intel and everything going on in Ohio.
No, I made a couple trips to Salt Lake this year. There's so much opportunity there. I would pick that over the Midwest. I mean, it is just ripe for development, right? Because it's almost like it's 20 years behind, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many opportunities out there. And I think once it gets on people's radar, like it did yours, it's going to absolutely blow up.
Yeah, and the tech sector, there's a lot of tech. Southern Salt Lake's got a huge tech industry building there and kind of growing. That's the leaps and bounds growth right now too. So yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, and look, you're doing this now. If you had waited 20 years, are you really going to go mountain biking and skiing and hiking in the desert, right? This is the benefit of commercial real estate. I mean, look at me. I'm at a lake house right now. There's boats behind me, right? My W-2, I could never do this. So that's the benefit of commercial real estate, is it affords you your lifestyle sooner than if you just take the traditional path.
Yeah. No, and it's, there's some cool things that as it builds back on it, where I start looking at my past and how I can make it all kind of dovetail together. Cause I was talking to some folks from the ski industry and they're like, dude, you should go back to teaching part-time and go to Deer Valley. You meet a few people with some money to invest. I was like, holy cow, it's a brilliant idea. And then one of my patients is a commercial pilot. And he's like, oh, you know what you should do? He gets all excited. He's like, you should do flight physicals. I'm like, we got to get a flight physical every 6 months. It's like $200-300 cash. You're there for like 10 minutes. I think there's more to it because when I contacted the FAA, there's a little more to it. But the point is, he's like, and then you meet pilots. Pilots love to invest. I'm like, I can start putting these things together here. I can have my doctor crew, my Park City Deer Valley crew, my pilot crew. It's all networking.
This all goes back to networking. Yeah. Building your network. And it's amazing what you can learn from a pilot, a ski instructor, a waitress. I mean, you can always learn something from somebody, right? So yeah, that's incredible. Before we kind of close it out, is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I think we got through it pretty good. I think the big thing there was really, for docs, it is the fear that you made a mistake and putting all this time into it, or fear of leaving it behind. But like you said, if you won $100 million, what would you do tomorrow? And if not going back to work is part of that, then that's a time to start making a plan to do something, to have the ability to do something different, to at least be more work optional and not have to go.
Yeah, my wife just retired 2 weeks ago, was her last day, and she's 48. I can't tell you how many times she said, "Hey, do we have enough money for me to retire? Like, I'm done." Like, and her practice got bought out by private equity. They ran it into the ground, and she was just mentally done. But loves what she does, but just couldn't handle it anymore. And I can't. Again, the number of times she's like, "Hey, you sure we can manage this?" Like, take it easy, yeah. Like, but it's not like we have the money today. We don't have enough money to retire today, right? But we've got the path. We know how to grow money with commercial real estate. And that's what changes everything, right? So, Mike, I love what you're doing with getting the message out there. And anybody that's a medical professional, a lawyer, entrepreneur, somebody that has spent years perfecting their craft and is in a grind, and they know they're not going to do that forever, how do they reach out to you?
I think the easiest way is you can either go to surgeonsyndicate.com website and you can book a call there and we can talk, or Fortress Capital, or our investment company, and you can book a call there too, and we can have a one-on-one discussion about what you want to do and how I can help you. And it's not, and I think here's the thing that docs always expect a sales pitch. It's not a sales pitch. If we can have a path that we work together and it's mutually beneficial, that's great. If it turns out that it's not a fit, that's great too. And just, if we can just point you in the right direction.
Yeah, anybody that's even thinking about getting in touch with you absolutely should. And I'm just thinking, when my kids get older, I want you to mentor them, because you've got an amazing spirit and you've accomplished some incredible things, but yet you've stayed true to yourself, right? You've made some really difficult decisions, but I think you're doing life the right way. So listen, man, I'm incredibly proud to call you a friend. I love what you're doing, and just keep it up.
Thanks, Ash. I appreciate it. So everybody, thanks for joining us today here on Surgeon Syndicate. I hope this has added some value to you. If you have any questions, you want to talk, you're not sure where to start, reach out. We talked about it earlier, where you can find me, surgeonsyndicate.com, thefortresscapital.com. You can book a call there and we can talk about whatever you want to help you move towards your ideal life. So thank you, Ash, for joining us. And thank you, everybody. Join us next time on Surgeon Syndicate. This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.